Hey, this is Nate Wells.
And this is Drew Cove.
Check out our podcast, that Go for Hockey podcast, for the latest news and updates on University of Minnesota hockey. You can find us on iTunes, and we're also on the Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
That's elite.
The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
They may be drinkers, Robin, but they're also human beings.
Hell yeah, let's get stinko.
Welcome to Giles Podcast. I am your host, Giles Burrow. Across the interwebs from me via some weird technology is Ben Remington.
Hello.
And joining us to help launch the new Zone Coverage studio is our resident, in air quotes, columnist, Tom Schreier.
I'm here. I built it by hand.
Yeah, I can tell.
It's a beautiful work of architecture.
Wonderful craftsmanship, Tom.
Yeah, we're using this technology
You may
called
remember
Skype.
him from such podcasts as last week's episode.
Troy McClure, I'm here.
First, are you guys dealing with the cold all right? Because I'm sick of it. I'm sick of the blizzard and cold. I thought I could handle it, but I can't.
Yeah, I don't know. It hasn't really bothered me. It's just like, it's more of a small nuisance to me still. I haven't like reached my breaking point. I think a lot of people are reaching their breaking points, and I'm not quite there yet because I don't know. It doesn't really bother me. I enjoy snowblowing. Maybe that has something to do with it. I have a snowblower from like the 1970s that still works pretty well. And
1970s?
It's old. I don't know exactly how old, but it's pretty old.
Does
but
it have seniority over you?
it definitely yes. But I actually don't mind snowblowing at all. So that probably has a lot to do. If I had to shovel my own driveway, I would be rip-roaring pissed about the winter already.
Giles, what he's saying is he's a man. You know what? This cold doesn't bother him.
Some of us
He's got a manly beard.
Some of us still shovel like a real man, I guess. But hey, that's just
Don't
me,
you pay
I guess.
association fees, Giles? Why are you shoveling?
I don't know. 'Cause I feel like getting some exercise.
Yeah, I am not about exercise. I went to the gym today for the first time in like 6 months. No joke.
Yeah, I saw all over social media. Wherever I looked, there you were, talking about being at the gym.
Yeah, taking gym selfies. That's
Shirtless.
That's
It
yes,
was manly.
exactly. Yeah.
It was manly.
Twitter, boom, I'm at the gym. Instagram, boom, I'm at the gym.
I didn't post it on Facebook. That's right. I should have posted it on Facebook.
Just claim you have like a lower body injury that sidelined you for several weeks from going to the gym again.
Like
You can call it the Victor Rask motive.
I stepped
top.
on a puck.
Right.
That's what happened.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, we've got a pretty heavy show to get through here, so no point in wasting everyone's time. And just for time's sake, because I'm sure we're going to go on some long rants here, we're going to skip right through the week in review.
We don't get to
You
talk about the
can
3-game
look
win
up.
streak? Oh.
No, we're going to skip right through that. You can go to hockeyreference.com and figure that out. So, good. We're about to have a dog fight in my basement. Anyway.
Giles, where do you live that you regularly have
I live in
dog
a
fights?
zoo.
Is this a Mike Vick situation? Because I feel like I should start distancing
dog-
myself from this podcast.
This is going to be evidence in an FBI case.
The dog next door comes over into my side of the yard to go to the bathroom, which is infuriating. So right now it's outside barking at something, which is pissing off my dog, because my dog is the power male authority.
Just like
So
you, Giles.
he's not taking kindly to it.
And
Anyway,
don't-
enough about dogs. Where was I? I literally forgot.
Where do we want to start? You said we're not doing a
trade.
week in review. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we're not doing weekend. Man, this is so bad. The Minnesota Wild on, what the hell was it, Tuesday or Wednesday? One of those days. They traded Charlie Coyle of the Boston Bruins for Ryan Spooner and a conditional draft pick. The move was kind of expected, as Charlie Coyle was pretty heavily thought of as a player who was going to be moved, given he had a reasonable $3.2 million cap hit this year and next before becoming a UFA. The Wild get a prospect in return in Ryan Spooner, who was in the AHL with Providence, the Boston affiliate. After he had some struggles this year, he signed out of college last season with the Boston Bruins. He was also a big Team USA guy last year. He was in the Olympics. And if I can find his stats, because I am in no way prepared for this, because I'm a professional.
We'll start.
With the Boston Bruins in 46 games, 11 goals, 7 assists, and 18 points.
We'll start
between end of last year and this year.
We'll start with this. I believe you said Ryan Spooner, and Ryan Donato might.
Did I do it? Did I do it again?
Did he do it again?
Yeah, he called him Ryan Spooner. Ryan Donato.
I did it. I did it in a video that directly followed the trade during the week, and somebody called me out on it. And I said, okay, good thing I caught it now, but apparently I have not. It is Ryan Donato. I apologize.
Yeah, so we Ryan Donato, who dad coaches at Harvard, ex-NHLer from Boston, obviously Bruins and Providence. I think it's interesting that Charlie Coyle, who I think was well liked here, gets to go home. And there was kind of those funny rumors that he might go to Montreal, which they're pros, they're not gonna dog it playing for the Canadiens, but it's sent to a rival team. This way he goes back home. My concern with Donato right away was that here's a player that I get these guys move around quite a bit, but has generally been Boston centric, and you're sending him to a completely unknown market. But I believe it was 2 assists in his first game. Already has scored. Shoots first, kind of upside at 22 years old. I think. I don't hate this trade. I think after the Niederreiter trade, I was very skeptical, and as Ben, you wrote about.
Same.
Yeah. You kind of go, can you trust him? This.
Are we all?
Yeah, this to me. Immediately, and we'll have to, take some time with this one. As much as I think Coyle is going to be the classic Minnesota to Boston athlete, I would guess he scores 90 goals in the next 3 years. I think Donato could be a star.
Lord.
And here's the difference is with Victor Rask, if he was any good, you go, maybe he didn't get, 1-for-1 with Niederreiter, but he just doesn't seem like a guy that's going to be productive here, where Ryan Donato, to me, could be a player they absolutely need as a first forward.
So it's obviously hard not to like Donato at this point. With the debut that he's had, a point in every game, 4 points total. But I don't know. It seems like it's a gamble. It's a big gamble on Donato, but at least they added the 5th round pick with it. So there's that. That helps kind of mitigate the risk a little bit. 5th round picks don't really mean much, but I thought they did pretty well with 5th round picks this past year, and one Kiprill Kaprizov was a 5th round pick. So miracles do happen, but
so they get a Russian player who never comes over.
Exactly. Yes, they're gonna draft the rights to somebody who never wants to play for this team. But I don't know. I think Donato. I don't know. I get the feeling that he ends up more on a production level, more like Coyle than anything. I don't think he's a guy who scores 30, 40 goals. I don't think. He's a very different player than Coyle. I get that. The smaller guy, more of a, more maybe uses his skill more, I guess I should say, than Coyle maybe. But I don't know that his production is going to be that much markedly different if he reaches that level, which, Charlie Coyle was pretty decently productive. 2 years ago, he had 57 points. That's nothing to sneeze at in the NHL. So, I don't know. I didn't love this trade. I like Donato, but for what Coyle costs this year and next, I'm not wild about it. I don't know. It just seems like they gave up a little bit, and that's going to kind of be a theme, I think. The Niederreiter for Rask was way unbalanced,
right?
But it just feels like, even though I like Donato, and we'll get to Fiala, I just feel like it's another trade that he kind of lost. I don't know. I'm not that big of a believer.
There's a lot to work on in Ryan Donato's game, and that's what he was sent to Providence for this season. As he needed to be better on the puck because his puck management was pretty poor, apparently, at least for Bruce Cassidy, the Bruins head coach, his puck management was pretty poor, and he needed 2 different stints in Providence this year to work on it. And he again acknowledged it. However, he did acknowledge that he felt his skills were better put to use in the NHL. And then he goes on to say that he can be a 30-goal scorer, which the Wild are giving him that chance now. They're letting him work his stuff out in the NHL, and they're also letting his shooting abilities get showcased, which I also highlighted in my Ryan Donato article on zonecoverage.com. Pat self on back for getting name right. He loves to shoot, and in his first 3 games, I know sample size, but he's averaging 3 shots per game, which is, I believe it's second on the team to Parisi in terms of average shots per game. And that's what you want. And that is exactly why he scored the winning goal against St. Louis on Sunday night. Was he shot it from an angle that no one else on the team outside of Parisi is probably shooting from. And Jake Allen was caught off guard, or Jake Allen was just ass in overtime, whichever route you want to believe.
Jake Allen's
Either
ass.
one is fine.
He's ass.
But how many consecutive podcasts is that where we've said that? We've got to be up to like a good.
It's
5
one of
or
our
6.
it's one of our things. I've been working on that for years.
Yeah. But anyway, this guy has a shooter's mentality. Your team is in bad need of that. And, you know, let him, he's only, 22 years old, 23 years old. No, 22, almost 23 in just another month and change. But you've got to like this for Minnesota's sake. And the 5th round pick Minnesota also got was a conditional pick. So I like the fact that they got Ryan Donato. I think he had just fallen down the depth chart in Boston, which is a pretty deep hockey team into itself. So this feels like a win for the Wild, and that they're taking advantage of the Bruins' depth, that they're plucking a good prospect from their team for Charlie Coyle, who, you know, he hit his ceiling here. There's no way around that. He had hit his ceiling. He was what he was. He's a good depth player, and that's what the Bruins got. And if Donato hits his upside here, then I think down the road the Wild maybe get the better player in terms of goal scoring.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still kind of I think at his peak, yeah, he's as good as Coyle, maybe more goals, but I don't know. It just
I think what you're going to see from Coyle is that he's maybe just on a better team and will score more opportunities. For him.
Yeah,
and
the Nino effect.
And I think he may still not be the problem is, at least for me, I rarely see Eastern teams, right? Because the Wild will tend to play obviously more Western teams. Unless they're in big matchups in the playoffs or whatever, I don't see him as much. Coyle may never become the player we expected, the big physical force, right?
Power forward.
He still could score again.
No, that's what I also wrote when I closed the book on his tenure here, was he never lived to the hype that maybe was unfairly put on him because of him being the last hope of the Brent Burns trade, because the other 2 elements of that trade so quickly flamed out.
You put it well. It's not his fault. Setaguchi unfortunately had the alcohol issues. He looked like a 30-goal scorer. Yeah. Different kind of player, but and they messed up the first round pick. I mean, that's not Charlie Coyle's fault. So
no, not at all.
So I don't know. I mean, I think in terms of you potentially get a team leader, I think you also have to look at the difference in age, and that Coyle should, age 26, be entering his prime, where Donato 22, or at least maybe in the middle of his prime. They tend to say forwards are better in the 20s, where defensemen age better. But he should be in the middle of it, where Donato should be entering it. And I guess the way I look at this, and I'll get to this when we talk about all the trades, but I don't mind going a little younger while also preserving the fact that, look, he can get in the 7-8 seed because that team's not good. Half the league gets in there. So keep this team in the playoffs, give people a reason to continue to go to the XL Energy Center, but also get younger because this current core was not good enough to get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
It's as if for a long time on this podcast, I have been harping about getting younger and faster because that's where the league has gone.
It's a wise observation from a man who has a dogfight behind him.
Wise observation from a man who gets his groceries delivered.
Extravagant lifestyle of one Giles Farrell.
So moving right along, unless then you had one last thought on the Coyle trade.
No, that's about it.
Okay.
I think we hammered it.
Okay. Moving along to trade deadline day, Monday afternoon, 2 p.m. Central Time was the trade deadline, and boy, oh boy, teams were cramming themselves right into Central Registry at 1:55 p.m. because nothing really happened up until then. Because that's about 20 minutes previous when Mark Stone was traded to the Vegas Golden Knights. But the big trade of the day for the Minnesota Wild, Mikael Granlund traded to the Nashville Predators for forward Kevin Fiala in a straight-up 1-for-1 deal. Kevin Fiala is 22 years old on the season with the Predators, 64 games, 10 goals, 22 assists, 32 points. Last season in Nashville, 80 games. He had 23 goals, 25 assists, 48 points. He was trying to work on some things this year. David Poyle had a good quote that was kind of floating around on Twitter from their athletic writer Adam Bingen. But he had kind of maybe faltered a little bit this year, and the Wild trying to maybe revive his career, get it going. But I guess that's not maybe the best way to put it. But anyway, the Wild giving up Mikael Granlund, their leading point scorer from the last 2.5 years in a straight-up 1-for-1 trade. I'll just let Ben or Tom have the floor because I'm sure there's a great many deal of thoughts.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the Donato trade I mentioned. I don't love this trade, and it's certainly the Wild getting younger. Yes, you got to like that. Certainly the Wild getting guys who are RFAs, somewhat cost controlled versus guys on their first big contract. You got to like that. But, similar to the Donato trade, I don't, this one even more so. The Donato trade, I think, was relatively even compared to this. Granlund for Fiala, I don't think that's relatively close. Like, I think Granlund, yeah, sure, he's only got a year left on his deal, but he's got a year left on his deal. He's not a rental. And so that's kind of the thing, is that you're getting just Fiala. You're getting nothing at all to mitigate the risk that you're taking on that Fiala doesn't become as good as Granlund in short order. So you're getting Fiala, who very talented, obviously, a guy who, 20 goals scored already, but he's not a 60-plus point guy. And if Fiala doesn't get there, what else do you have from this deal to make up the risk? That's how trades should work. You should have something where, the guy giving up, the team giving up the now player should always have the opportunity to do better in the long run. That's why they make these kind of deals.
So get a second rounder.
Get
high
a
upside
pick.
prospect.
Get something, anything. And I don't think that they were particularly close to prying Eli Tolvanen away from him as much as we would have loved that. But do something along those lines where you kick him an extra pick or something to get a guy like Tolvanen thrown into this deal. Anything to where you don't the entire success of Mikael Granlund not being with the Wild anymore rests on Kevin Fiala and Kevin Fiala alone, because he's disappointed already. Granted, again, he's 22. He's already scored some points, but he doesn't reach that 60-plus point plateau. Then what did you deal Granlund for? Then it's just a salary dump.
It's kind of why they got insurance in the Rask deal. Oh,
yeah.
Who knows? Some of these things, like the whole is it Potato, or who's the guy with the crazy face that they got?
Yeah, Potato.
Potato.
Again, it was the process that was wrong. It's just like that forced you to make roster moves that you don't want to make. And I don't know if that's kind of a young GM thing. Again, he should have learned from Poyle, who's one of the, he's a pro, and this guy should have been studying under him.
Right.
But this is the minutia, and maybe this is something a more veteran GM does, is even get something that's maybe not a value everyone loves, but at least you have a pick or a prospect or something. Mm-hmm. Having said that, Fiala, 23 goals last year, 48 points. That's not Granlund production, but that is also at age 21. He also drafted 11th overall in 14, traded for a guy drafted, I believe, 9th overall in 10. Yeah. You are getting younger, and it's not you would think, now we know that the first round of each draft even in order.
Yeah.
You know,
Very great.
right? You can have Pouliot and you can have you know, whatever, right? I'm trying to remember the guy they should have drafted in that. I think it was Kopitar or something.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? It's not. It doesn't. But it seems like I get what you're saying. There's no insurance here, but it also seems like a player who could be productive, especially traded. What I think is interesting about this is teams tend not to go like straight up head to head, but we know. You know, that Fenton is going back to the old well with his Nashville players.
Right.
I felt like worked pretty well with Hunt. Didn't work as well with Potato.
Yeah.
I kind of, it's interesting that this will all happen. It will, right, where you're not dealing with Boston or Carolina right now. And this will go head to head in the division where Nashville could be the team to beat, or at least one of the teams to beat.
I think they are now. They acquired Simmons and Granlund. That's going to be a hell of a dog race down the.
And it's the same thing. Granlund with a star player. We went back to what I said before. They don't have that star goal scorer, right? Granlund could be a guy that Chichu's a really extreme example, but a guy that could just rack up points just by playing on a line with a great player because we've seen his passing.
Oh yeah.
Having said that, given how the roster is constructed for the Minnesota Wild, it doesn't make sense because he keeps on passing up shots when you're literally like shoot the puck towards the net. That's right. That's how you get a point, right? And I think, again, I go back to, I'm curious in the big picture, looking at two trades from a 26-year-old to a 22-year-old, and looking at what happened in the past. And I feel like, to be fair, Mike Yeo was part of this problem, but we saw this huge age gap, right? We had the young prospects who, to be fair, Parise and Suter came for, but there seemed to be kind of like the young prospects versus the older established win now veterans.
That rift in Yoa's final year here. That was a huge thing. That was a huge theme of a lot of articles.
If you just go onto Hockey Reference now and list the roster by age, you got Cunning Greenway 21, Eriksson Ek, Donato 22, Dumba 24, Sealer, Rask, whatever. A whole bunch in that kind of that age where there's some hope, right? That you don't quite know where they're at. But then you're not really missing much age up until I guess Koivu at 35. But I at least you kind of every age is listed there, and there shouldn't be a gap unless like there's a hole in the middle where there's like a whole bunch of mid-20-year-olds who aren't very good or something like that. You're hoping Zucker comes back. You're hoping, I guess right now they've traded away a lot of the skill in that 26 age, but Brodin, you hope he continues to play the way he's playing, stuff like that, because that should mitigate some of that locker room frustration that there seemed to happen earlier, so that you don't repeat history, because that really is kind of the most insane thing you could do with the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, I'm just more worried about it from a talent standpoint. It's just, again, Fiala, it's great and very talented, but, when they're already, I saw an article about him referenced today where it was like, is Kevin Fiala going to be all right? It's just like there's already articles about being frustrated over this guy's talent.
Players like that sometimes need to change of scenery. And again, I'm more playing devil's advocate because I would agree with you on a lot of those points. Yeah. But it's, potentially a guy like Donato needs to get out of Boston, get away from home, pressure that's
he's
there.
Played in Massachusetts his entire life.
Right. And with Fiala, maybe there's a Niederreiter effect, because we saw with Niederreiter, he got out of, Long Island. Yeah. He was great for a while here. He got out of here. Everyone knows he's thriving in Carolina. So maybe a guy like that, and I guess that's what you're gambling on. However, I agree with you. You probably should have mitigated it somehow. Try to get one other element in that trade.
He did get a fifth in the Coyle deal. Not that everybody loves that, but at least it was something.
Right.
If you would have gotten a fifth along with Fiala, it'd be like, still, everyone, all the national folks even were calling it kind of lopsided for the Preds.
Get a boom and bust prospect, something like that.
Yeah,
something like
that. Or
yeah.
like I said, even a pick, even a mid-round pick. I think you get a third-round pick with this deal, and it's like,
and given how bare the cupboard is, like just get players into the system.
Exactly. You're literally rebuilding on the fly. You're rebuilding Chuck Fletcher's prospect cash on the fly.
Gave away some second-round picks.
Right.
This is what David Poyle said earlier this month to the Athletic Nashville branch. He said, Kevin shows flashes of brilliance. Then he goes on to say, I'll make you a bet he's going to score 30 goals in this league. I know it's going to happen, but still there's parts of his game he has to work on, and his balance has to be better. He's a little bit of a streaky player. You can see some nights when he has it. You can see it after he makes a really good play or really scores a goal. I think it's just a little bit of time. We'd like to accelerate that with him. Well, obviously, he won't be accelerating that there anymore. But and I wonder if this is also just another case where this is a guy like Donato who got buried down the depth chart in Boston, where Fiala with Nashville, was he going to get good ice time on a team that is really stacked? Like, I don't even know where Granlund's going to slot in. And then the Predators also added Wayne Simmons on Monday. Like, how they continue to just stack their roster is beyond me. But for the point, Kevin Fiala in his last 5 games with the Predators, 11-17, 12-34, 11-39, 17-42, and then 12-08.
Yeah, it's not a lot of time.
And the 17-42 game was against the LA Kings. He is averaging 15.03 of ice time this year, which, kind of puts him, top 6, top 9, kind of second, third line area.
Yep.
So I do wonder if it's a thing of David Poile saying, he can be a 30-goal scorer, but it's not going to be with this team because we've just got too many guys up the depth chart that he's never going to get over. So he's giving them a chance. And my other thing is here with draft picks, it's like I keep going back to the I think it's Charting Hockey who has the graph on Twitter or on his stuff too.
Yeah, Sean Tierney.
NHL shelf life by draft picks. And you can just see after the first round, it's just almost a straight line. Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
So, and Paul Fenton acknowledged this after he made the trade on Monday that, we just wanted a hockey trade. Like, so he's basically saying no draft pick is going to amount to Mikhail Granlund. So he's basically throwing his eggs in the basket of Kevin Fiala, as one of you mentioned earlier. I'm not, fairness and closure. I was a little aggravated at this trade when I first sat down, opened up Twitter, and I read it when I was on my lunch break today. That was a fool's mistake. Never tweet out your initial reactions to a trade before you, calm down and think about it.
Giles, if you ain't first, you're last.
I agree with that.
Yeah, whatever. I'm not appalled at this trade, and I think Kevin Fiala can turn into a good player, as we've kind of talked about. He has the skills to be a good offensive player. I don't really care about the salary dump, although we're going to come back to this a little bit later on kind of salary implications here from these trades, but I like it. This is kind of a shoot your shot type of a deal for Paul Fenton. And Paul Fenton has, a lot of history scouting Kevin Fiala. He drafted Kevin Fiala. So there's a lot of familiarity there, as somebody had already said. And the same goes for Ryan Donato. Obviously Paul Fenton didn't draft Ryan Donato. Well, I got it right twice in a row. But he was scouting him pretty good this year. So, and this is a guy who had a pretty good draft record with Nashville. So you got to when he sees something he likes, there's probably something there. So I'll give him credit for this. He's taking a shot on this trade. And no, you're not going to replace Mikhail Granlund's passing abilities with this trade. But basically what he's saying is, I want guys who want to score goals. Basically what he has done here is he's just trading away what he considers to be the passengers on this team. And that is what people wanted when Paul Fenton was hired, to get rid of the passengers on this team. And he acknowledged that again after the trade deadline had passed. He basically said, I have in my mind what this core is, and you have in your mind what this core is. And those are probably two very different things. And you know what? He's right. He probably considers his core to be the players he can't trade, like Suter, Parise, Koivu, and then you've got Dubnyk, and then you've got Dumba, and then I think that's it. I don't know where Jared Spurgeon lands, and we can come back to him later, but that's probably his core right now. And he probably considers guys like Cunnin, Ack, Greenway, Donato, and now Fiala as part of the core he wants to carry on moving forward.
Sure.
So I give him credit because he's making this team younger and faster and is emphasizing guys with skill and guys who are going to shoot the puck. So as much as we're going to miss Mikhail Granlund feeding great saucer passes to Jason Zucker that hit the goaltender in the chest ultimately, I mean, I need guys who are going to shoot to score. That's what the Wild need. And so I am not entirely appalled by this trade. I think it's okay. Ultimately, time will tell. And I think, honestly, Mikhail Granlund had reached his ceiling here. I don't think there was ever going to be a next level for him.
No,
I think without an actual goal scorer, he was never going to get any more than the mid-60 range in points here.
Yeah, I totally agree with
He
that.
may do much better in Nashville. Like, give him a full season next year with that team. Yeah, he might, get up maybe even into the 80-point range. Who knows? But he was never going to hit that here with the roster here. That's the sad reality. And I think Paul Fenton knew that he was never probably going to get the full-on trade value that he would have liked for these players, and Granlund included.
Yeah, and that sure.
I think he was painted into a corner when he was hired, which isn't fair to him. But when your boss basically says, yeah, he's here to tweak this roster, that kind of paints him in the corner. And then this is something I also wondered about today after I kind of let the initial reaction die out. Like, I think the league doesn't value Wild players like we value Wild players. And maybe there's something that needs to be discussed on that because, we saw Nino Niederreiter get traded for Victor Rask, which Paul Fenton would probably tell you now. He probably would take that one back. That's bad. But, Charlie Coyle, I think, got a fair return in Donato, which, again, it's kind of a higher risk, high reward kind of a thing. And then this is the same for Fiala, high risk, high reward. And you weren't going to get big hauls like Stone or Duchesne because the Wild don't have names that echo across the league as superstars. They have plenty of guys who fall into the next tier, but that you're not going to get anywhere close to the superstar level return when you're in that next tier.
No, and
So I think he got what he could have possibly have gotten. Otherwise, if he thought a better deal could be had this summer, he probably sits on Granlund. So that's where I'm at with this.
See, I'm not exactly sure about that, and I think that obviously the Wild aren't going to get a Mark Stone. I mean, not that the return for Mark Stone was all that impressive, but the return for Duchesne was, and so I agree. I don't think Granlund's bringing that back, but I also think a little bit that goes into the Fiala trade is he was Paul Fenton's guy. Like, he announced him at the draft. Russo mentioned that several times. This was someone that Fenton very much personally scouted and very much personally drafted, and it's one of his guys. It's his baby. And so I think that there's at least a little bit of the disappointment in the return for Granlund is that I think Fenton, David Poile knows that. He knows that Fenton loves this guy. He has to. They worked together for how long? And he drafted this guy 4 years ago. Like, there's no way Poile doesn't know that. And so it kind of puts Fenton over a barrel a little bit. Like, it kind of, Poile knows that what he can do is because he knows he's dangling a guy that Fenton desperately wants. And I think that played into it. So I don't disagree about any of your points about Fiala. I think that, this team acquiring more guys who want to shoot right away when they get the puck, that's not a bad thing. If anybody could beat the pass-first mentality out of the Minnesota Wild, I think Bruce Boudreau would pay handsomely for anyone who could possibly acquire more players like that or just find some kind of psychological way to beat that mindset out of this team. So I agree with you.
Free next year.
Yeah, no kidding. I totally agree with that. And so in those respects, these are good trades. I like acquiring Kevin Fiala. I like acquiring Ryan Donato. But I'm still a little bit disappointed in the return. I don't know that the Wild players should be marked off as a discount league-wide just because they're Wild players. Like I said, most of the national folks, their reaction to the Fiala-Granlund trade was, wow, did Nashville get a good deal on that? And I think that there's a reason for that. And so, again, not the end of the world. If Fiala reaches his potential, he's a 70-point guy, let's say. He's a 30-goal scorer or maybe even a 40-goal scorer. If he reaches his maximum potential, then then it's all well and good and we're fine. But that's not the scenario that I'm kind of envisioning. Like, I if he doesn't, then what? Then that's kind of the issue that I have.
I mean, I don't know. It has to feel like, Granlund was a favorite of everyone. So I think, there's maybe just a little bit of too much emotion in there. But again, I'm not appalled by this trade. I'm okay with it. Like, and just to reiterate, like, Paul Fenton is clearly trying to get rid of what he thinks are the passengers on this team. So that's what he was brought here to do. And he said that.
Sure.
This is why I was brought here, to figure this out.
To tweak.
So, yeah.
Tweak. All right. So you want to talk about the Zucker trade that never was?
I was going to quickly hit on the Matt Hendricks trade that
the trade that actually happened
after the deadline had passed. Obviously, Central Registry had about 50 calls on the phone line at the 2 p.m. deadline. So later on, Matt Hendricks was traded from the Minnesota Wild to the Winnipeg Jets. What was it? Just like a 7th round draft pick that they got in return. So, just a pretty minor trade, and Matt Hendricks just minimal appearances for the Wild this year. 22 games, just a pair of assists. Pretty beloved guy in Winnipeg. Played for them last year, so they were happy to bring him back aboard for their stretch run. So there's your other actual trade of the day, and it's been alluded to. Pierre LeBrun of The Athletic reporting here Monday evening that the Minnesota Wild and Calgary Flames were very close to a trade involving Jason Zucker. Nobody knows what that deal was as of yet. Nobody's reported that. LeBrun also pointed out that Russo seemed to have wind of that, but so we don't really know any specifics of what that trade framework looked like. But Jason Zucker to Calgary was a thing that nearly happened, but it did not today. And it's hard to judge a trade by what you don't know about it, like, what anything was going to come back in return. But I can't imagine that the Calgary Flames are going to send back anything of note because of Jason Zucker's struggles this year. I think he has just 16 goals this season after 33 last year. So, I'm sorry, 15 goals this season. So I am kind of glad that trade fell through. Because I cannot imagine that anything coming back would have been good from the Calgary Flames.
I think beyond that, again, going back to the age thing real quick, Hendricks' oldest player, right? And then the only players over 32, so dude makes 32, would be Eric Fair, who maybe you could have dealt, right? You maybe could have gotten something for him. But then Suter, Staal, Parise, Koivu. So we know Koivu's contract status. We certainly know Parise, Suter's. We'll get to Eric Staal in a second, I'm sure. But I like the idea of keeping a potentially high upside, and I know people aren't going to view him that way, player in Jason Zucker, who's proven to score, who's on a longer term deal, who's more of a certainty. I mean, there's obviously potentially people are going to be concerned there's less of a floor than, or, a lower floor than we initially thought a year ago. But I feel like that deal would have been another 22-year-old with upside, right? And I just don't think you want to do that 3 times. Let's see what happens with Donato. Let's see what happens with Eric Stanek, who obviously they traded for. Let's see Fiala. And I just think putting way too many eggs in that basket isn't smart, especially when Zucker could be traded and take off, and you're probably getting a lesser deal, even lesser than what you guys felt were poor returns in the deals that actually went through because of the term of his contract, how long it is.
Yeah, and
the Flames were like, see, I don't know if he could have gotten another 20-something back because the Flames are like right at the cap, so that means some contract would have had to have come back to Minnesota,
Which you're getting
is
another
terrifying.
Rask. Yeah, you're getting another Victor Rask.
Right.
Because if the guy was good, the Flames
I
aren't
don't
going to let him go.
I did quote tweet LeBrun's tweet on the trade that fell through, and I said the deal fell through because the Flames refused to send Matthew Tkachuk's copy of the code along in the trade.
It's a great tweet.
Yeah, I think with the Zucker deal,
Do I need to spell it out for you?
No.
You're good.
I think with the Zucker
Okay,
deal,
it was a bad joke. I get it.
I think Tony kind of hit on the head with Zucker is that you're selling very low on him.
A player with a lot of control and 30-plus goals.
Right. And so, is he having a down year? Well, of course. But I don't think that having a down year every year the player has a down year, they should be traded. Even if I get it, the Wild are kind of retooling. But, Tony brought up a great point. He's like, his shooting percentage is crazy low. His teammates' shooting percentage, the whole Wild team. I mean, you look at their PDO, and they're almost in the basement as far as PDO goes. Part of that is bad goaltender play, so I get that. But another part of that is a low shooting percentage from the whole team, and that affects everyone's numbers. When your teammates aren't shooting well, you don't get a lot of points. And obviously, when you're not shooting well, you don't get a lot of points. It's pretty simple. So I think, I'm with Tony, our guest last week, was pretty against trading Zucker unless the deal was absolutely incredible. And I just feel like this season right now, that deal wouldn't have been absolutely incredible for a lot of reasons. And again, like you said, it would have had to been some kind of salary dump on the other end. So what are you getting back? Are you getting back like Mike Smith or something? Like what? Like you're getting back some bad contract, like Victor Rask or something to that effect, where it's like, I'm really glad they didn't make that kind of deal because that might have tipped the scales on the day.
Like, Paul, don't do that twice.
Yeah, we
Right.
don't need that again.
And as time moves on, we can kind of revisit this. And if, I guess I should say, if more details are released about this trade that fell through, we can come back to it. But I guess for now, we can just kind of leave that for what it was, and that you were probably selling low and something pretty terrible was coming back in return from the Flames. Then the last newsworthy thing of the day from the Minnesota Wild on deadline day was about 15 minutes before the deadline, it was reported that Paul Fenton and Eric Staal's agent had a conversation in which they had a ceasefire on Fenton making any trade calls on Eric Staal, not trading him. And then, weirdly enough, Paul Fenton came out after the deadline, talked to the media about the moves he made, and then roughly, 20, 30 minutes later, it gets announced that Eric Staal has signed a 2-year contract extension for $6.5 million, so a $3.25 million AAV, which is actually a $0.25 million decrease from what he's currently making. So Eric Staal taking probably a marginal pay cut to remain in Minnesota, a place he absolutely did not want to leave. As referenced time and time again, he was very much enamored with staying with the Wild. And I did throw this out there on Twitter. Now that this is behind him and, he can kind of put his mind at ease, it wouldn't surprise me if his game here took off a little bit.
I mean, you're kind of hoping so. I think the thing you have to remember is that great run in Carolina. When he became a Ranger, there was some question of, in his final year in Carolina.
It was brutal.
Just kind of what happened, because he seems built to be and was drafted as a guy who seemed to have longevity. That you'd feel comfortable that even though he's a forward, tend to play well in their 20s and then tail off a little bit. 40 goal, including his second year in the league at age 21, 40 goal scorer. Just kind of the track record he had would suggest that he's better than that. I think you're not going to see his age 33 season again. I'd be really, really surprised. But it's weird that in a year that I know that I think Giles is right. Maybe this clears his head. He continues to push forward. But in a year where it seems go ahead.
I guess I don't think he's going to, have another 40-goal season, but I think there was definitely something that was kind of weighing on him. And, they're just instances in a game where he'd shoot the puck, and last year where you'd see him score on shots like that, they would either go wide or just, it would hit the goaltender. And then he would just kind of have this, just expressionless look where he's just like, great, this again. And maybe now after this, it's just kind of one of those mental things where he doesn't have to worry about it anymore, and he can just kind of get back out there and do what he does best. And, maybe he can add, another 6-7 goals before the end of the year and kind of carry that on moving forward. I'm in no way ever expecting him to put up 42 goals and 34 assists in a season again. But, getting back to a, at least like a mid-50s point center, maybe next year, and remaining to be seen what happens in the final year, we'll see. But essentially, and also with this was something that was asked to me by our friend Brian Reynolds, was what's the point of this if you are kind of looking at restocking and going younger? And I pretty much said, Fenton probably sees Eric Staal as a stopgap with this 2-year contract to figure out what he's going to do at the center position.
Yep.
Mikko Koivu has 1 year left on his deal, and he's 35, 36. Now you've got Eric Staal 2 years after this. Basically, it's buying some time to see if he needs to start finding a young center who can potentially be their number one center down the road, or, is Joel Eriksson going to be that center? Is somebody they have on the Luke Cunnin, does he get back into center? He basically is buying himself a couple of years to try and figure out what is going to happen at center after Koivu and Staal.
Yeah, totally. I think it's just the scarcity of finding an honest to goodness center on the market is a huge reason why this Staal deal is a big win, because it's like you're not going to find a guy like that, especially for that price, anywhere. And so does he fit in with what Paul Fenton is currently doing? No, he's old and slow. But but at that price, 2 years and 3 1/4, you are signing you could sign almost anybody to that deal and no one's gonna blink an eye. Yeah, he's barely making more than Marcus freaking Foligno.
I think that's a fair point. I because I'm a dummy, I was like, yeah, they're gonna trade Spurgeon at the deadline. And I guess the point I was trying to make there is that you can go kind of a couple different routes. There was obviously the that route where you're kind of blowing it up and maybe not only removing the core from the team, but also trying to get a pick this year. This is obviously the route of let's see if you can get in that 7-8 seed while also going younger and a little bit cheaper, trying to kind of free up some cap space and starting to dismantle the core. You got to have Spurgeon if you're trying to make the playoffs. I think you got to have Dubnyk. You probably need Staal as well.
Yeah.
Unless Staal really, really, really hits a wall. No rhyme intended there. But I think I definitely put him in that category. The other thing we've seen, and it did lead to a bad contract with Stalock, but he seems to want players who want to be here. And Staal made that incredibly clear.
Yeah.
The other thing with him is that better player in a more prominent role, but also there is kind of that team captain aspect to him. I know he won't have a letters,
He wears the A right now, so
yeah, but he seems to have a leadership role. He obviously had that in Carolina, and I don't think you completely, if you're the Wild, punt on anyone who's not in their early 20s, and I think that even there's a risk involved in that because we saw that with the core that aged to 26, the Niederreiters, that Zuckers, whatever, Coils didn't quite pan out as they were supposed to. Mm-hmm. And this, as much as within an individual trade does not mitigate risk, and they probably should have done that, it does seem like he's constructing a roster that has fewer risk points. It's not just a flood of 22-year-olds who are going to be maybe looked down upon by the preseason suitors if they don't pan out. Sure. And you just don't want to create that again. So that's why I think you keep a Zucker around as a Spurgeon, a Staal, especially because I just think the complete burn down doesn't necessarily work,
Right,
Because you'll say, well, Pittsburgh and Chicago or whatever, but there's every one of those there's an Edmonton or whatever. So
There's 5.
yeah, and the Coyotes or something, whatever. Right. But like this way, I mean, I don't mind what he's doing, even if the individual actions haven't been great. At least we don't know if they are yet. But I don't hate it. I just do worry a little bit that Staal's in that Koivu category, where I like Koivu as a player, didn't love the salary, like the contract they gave him, at least at the time that they did.
Well, but with Staal, he's making so little. It's just
Right,
like
and it's even less. Yeah.
You could, it really helps, as you talked about, like kind of having different levels of players age-wise. Sure. You kind of have that now with contracts. You avoided that pitfall with Staal. So now you got Parise and Suter, 34 years old, pretty big contracts. Koivu's 1 more year on the books. Staal's 2 more years. You move on down the line, you don't have another multi-year guy until Jason Zucker, who is, 27, 26. And so you've got him, and that's it. So you've got 3 contracts.
Yeah, Zucker 27.
Beyond 3 years, and that's it. And so you avoided the 4-5 year deal with Staal that he honestly might have gotten on the open market.
Sure.
And instead he takes a pay cut. Yeah, and he wants to be here. So, yeah, I really like it. I really like the Staal contract. I think that, just like the first one, it was the right place, the right time, and this team is so starved for centers, as Giles said, they don't know who they have for center. It'd be nice if you want to jettison Eric Staal and say, we're getting younger and faster. Well, that's wonderful, but who the hell is going to play center? And if Luke Cunnin can't handle that move, he was drafted as a center, he's a wing now. If he can't handle that, if Joel Eriksson has to move to wing a la Mikael Granlund, as we saw Eriksson has played wing before, then what do? Centers don't grow on trees. That's why they cost so damn much on the open market.
Can you imagine? They're like, we're putting down the face-off. Is anyone going to take it? No. We got 2 left wings.
Yeah, they're all left-handed too.
Yeah, right.
They all
right.
just skate circles around each other, just stare at each other like, you taking the draw? I'm not taking the draw. We're not going to. Yeah. And so I don't know. I really like this Staal deal. I think it's great. It's exactly what you needed, and something a point that we all kind of thought of right away. And Tony, our friend, summed it up really well on Twitter. Is you give a Wild fan this deal at the beginning of the season, and they're doing backflips. I mean, they're doing absolute cartwheels over this deal, and because you never saw a deal like this coming going into the season. I mean, he's coming off of a 42 goal year, and he's in his mid-30s. He's like, oh my God, we're going to sign this guy for way too much money or way too much term or both. And now you've got a 2-year deal with less money than he's making, or less AAV than he's making right now.
Just to put 42 in context, I said 45 is age 21 season, 38 age 23, 40 age 24. That's a while ago, and it did kind of descend from kind of 30s to 20s. Even if he's a 25 goal scorer or something like that, it is production.
Oh, it's a great deal.
It justifies putting him on the ice, and you don't want guys in your locker room, especially when you're bringing in these new guys who first time they kind of change scenery and all that stuff, to be like, no one wants to be here.
Right.
And I think Parise and Suter still do. There's certainly things outside of hockey that brought him here. But there is some question. You go back and read that oral history that, Russo, and you're like, man, the expectations were very different when they signed. Having said that, this is their peer. And maybe if even at times when you got to give them a nudge and be like, hey, Ryan, like, shh. Like the young kids are listening, So, I think I don't hate it. I certainly don't think this was groundbreaking action at the deadline.
No.
But it may keep them in the playoffs as well as getting younger and faster, which in some ways is a move in the, this isn't the Nino deal over and over again. It seems to be a move in the right direction.
And they've got a locker room concierge to take care of all the guys in the locker room.
And frankly, super important.
Just in case.
All right, that can do it for the Eric Staal discussion. Now we can transition along here to our Bruce Boudreau quote of the week. Actually, hold that thought. We did have a little mailbag. I'm gonna quick give it to the mailbag, then we'll fire through our remaining segments. Just so if people don't care for that, they could turn it off. But a lot of replies are pretty much of the same nature. We have definitely not David replies to our Ask GATG Twitter question, or looking for the mailbag, and he just says, "What the bleep?" straight up.
Well,
Then we get why, just why.
These
Joe
are
Bowie
great
says,
names.
boy, there's a lot of frustration in the replies here, guys.
I think
don't want to alarm
honestly,
you.
for a lot of these people,
Ooh.
listen to the podcast.
First reply from Graham Young. Should we honestly be looking at Victor Rask as a potential buyout candidate?
Whoa.
I think there's a few too many years left for that. I think he at least gets a run next season to see if he can turn it around, right? Like Fenton went to the length of acquiring him for a very good hockey boy. I think you have to give him a full year. And this is not me as a Victor Rask fan at all. I just think seeing as how Fenton really stuck out his neck to acquire him, I don't think he cuts bait that quickly. I think he gives him a year and maybe tries to deal him to anybody who will listen, but I doubt there's any takers. Maybe he tries to dump him. I don't know, but I don't think you buy him out just yet. Was it 4 years left on his deal? So a 6-year buyout, I don't know that any first-year GM is willing to swallow that, admitting he made a mistake. I mean, this would only be, 6 months after the trade? So I don't see that. But I guess,
I will say this: if you buy out Victor Rask in this summer, it'll carry a cap hit for, as you said, 6 seasons, but it will just be a $1.333 million cap hit each year.
Sure.
So I don't fully close the book on buying out Victor Rask. I lean more with you that he probably gets another year, and then you buy him out in 2020, and then it again has just that 4 years of $1.33 million cap hit.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't rule it out entirely, because if Paul Fenton has some ulterior plans for clearing his books in free agency this summer, then getting rid of Victor Rask and having $2.7 million more free of cap space may help him in that quest. Because we also did, as a perfectly segue into Graham's next question, who should the Wild target in the offseason as a potential UFA? I wonder if he maybe has like a center in mind for UFA, for free agency. Like, does he take a run at a top center out there? Like Matthew
Maybe.
Shane? I don't know.
They'll have
Like,
room, but I
if he
don't know
truly
they'll have that
feels-
much room.
If he truly feels like, it's going to take me a long time to draft and develop a center with this team, and he feels like Eriksson, Kunnin, everyone on the roster can be better served as wings, then yeah, maybe he takes a run at a guy like Matt Duchene, who, would obviously be a significant cap hit, but he's a pretty good, center, and he just got traded to Columbus, if you didn't know that. But I don't know. I wonder if I'm trying to filter through centers here to see who else is available, because there's Joe Pavelski is a UFA, but I'm not sure if he'll leave San Jose.
I doubt he would.
And then it does kind of fall down. Maybe he goes after a guy like Kevin Hayes, who got a decent return from Winnipeg today in a trade. There's some decent options out there if he is looking for a center. So maybe he is going to take a run at somebody.
Yeah, and he'll have some room. Right now, the Wild have $16 million in cap room next season. They do have a pile of RFAs, of which they would just acquired. So, but most of the guys that they have to re-sign are cheap. They've got, Fair, Boteto, and Hunt are all UFAs. They'll be cheap if they even want to bring them back. So maybe $1 million each. Eriksson and Donato, I don't imagine will command a whole lot because they were essentially rookies.
No.
Donato's a rookie. Eriksson was a rookie last year, but is kind of disappointed. Fiala will command a little bit.
Bridge deals.
Yeah, and not for much. Like, maybe $1 million and maybe a little more, but not by much. But Fiala will cost a little bit. So I looked at it earlier today. So you've got 6 guys all right around the $1 million mark. and then you've got Fiala. So $10 million minus whatever you give Fiala, which, I mean, he might get $3 or $4 million, depending on what the deal is. So I don't think you have that much. I don't know that you have Matt Duchene money left over. You do have a lot more flexibility now, getting rid of the Granlund contract and trading it for Fiala, and you did save a whopping $1 million with Nino for Victor Rask. But you don't have tons of expendable income with this team, but you've got enough to where you could
Now,
sign.
just hear me out.
Yeah.
What if the reason we've been reading about Fenton trying to unload Greg Pateryn and Jason Zucker is that he's trying to pave the way for that cap space for Matt Duchene?
Well, yeah, and to your point, he
I'm
still could
really
make those
talking
trades.
myself into this.
Yeah, he could still make a lot of trades. I mean, you could still deal Jared Spurgeon. That's a very real possibility before the draft. You could still deal Zucker. That's a very real possibility before the draft. So, yeah, there could be. I mean, he could clear up a whole lot of cap space in a real hurry. There's plenty of history of teams doing that. So you could be right. But as it sits right now, he's got flexibility, but he doesn't have a ton of money.
All right. There were a couple of questions in the mailbag kind of speculating about what the Calgary return was going to be. We really hit on that. Also another one about why didn't the Wild get a draft pick on Fiala? We kind of hit on that.
Mm-hmm.
Then we've got Mike Schneider just kind of going with some conspiracy theory. Is this some Cold War era type sabotage from Nashville? Not every trade has to be 1-for-1. Then I think there was actually another question there. Any other players for the offseason that could be used as quote unquote retooling, trade bait? Zucker, obviously. Spurgeon, we touched on. Brodin.
Yep.
Dubnyk.
Yeah.
That's another kind of area that kind of we've talked about that kind of has to be addressed is goaltending, because the Wild they're not deep at goaltending. So you kind of wonder the future of the goaltending, and some else for Paul Fenton to figure out in addition to trying to figure out the future of the center position. So I don't know. That was the mailbag. A lot of questions kind of lumped in together. I'm sorry. There is one last question, and that was from Brian Reynolds, because he replied to me, not the tweet. So I have to go back and find it here. He says, let's see, what exactly is Paul Fenton trying to accomplish? Is he trying to make the team younger, faster, why resign Staal? Is there really a belief the veterans currently on the roster with swapping out Coyle, Granlund, Nino makes the team a contender?
No, I don't think that realistically Fenton would tell you that. Maybe he'd say that behind a podium, but in a real life conversation at a bar, I don't think he's going to tell you that.
Said year one of his plan.
Right. And so I think what he's doing now is he's positioning himself. He's getting guys that he likes. He's getting young guys. Yeah, he is getting younger and faster. And Staal obviously is the opposite of that, but it was such a good deal. And like you said, it was kind of a stopgap, kind of a place warmer for figuring out what the center position is going to be. I think Fenton will even tell you he's in year one of his plan, and it's probably going to take a little while. And did he promise tweaks to get this team further in the playoffs almost right away? Yeah, but realistically, I don't know that anybody should have expected that. I don't know that it works like that in the NHL. You can't just come into a team that gets eliminated in the first round every year and make them a contender overnight when you've got no farm system and no cap space.
I mean, it's also tweaks in as far as he didn't trade Spurgeon, Dubnyk. He didn't pull the heart out from the team, right? He didn't leave him for dead. So, tweak maybe isn't the right word, but it's not a full-fledged toss the gasoline on and light a match,
Yeah.
right?
It's not radio show host burn down like some of the guys are calling for.
Right.
Anyway. All right, that is the mailbag. Now we move on to our Bruce Boudreau quote of the week. The quote of the week from the Wild head coach comes to us on Thursday following the Wild win, and it was wasn't it New York? I believe they played on Thursday.
Yep.
On his debut, Boudreau was asked on Ryan Donato. Boudreau says, I coached his dad. And then he was asked if his dad liked him. Boudreau said, yeah, he liked me. I don't know if his son's going to like me. As you get older, you get crustier.
That's just that's such a good quote from Bruce, and it's how could you? I mean, at that point too, especially, they obviously they just acquired him, but they were just on the heels of what, like a 6 or 7 game losing streak. Boudreau was really starting to show frustration. I mean, this 3 game winning streak has cured a lot of ills, but I mean, it was to the point where the way that he would express himself after games was like, how much longer is Bruce going to stick around? Like, he's not even going to give Fenton an opportunity to fire him.
He'll just spontaneously get bossed.
Well, that too. He's just
Right.
he's going to blow up on the bench like the guy from Scanners. And no, he or he's just going to walk off the job like we talked about last week. Like, he's just going to like
I'm done.
During
And you're
intermission, he's just going to be like, peace out. He's going
Yeah.
to grab a hot dog. He's going to go to his car and he's going to leave. Like, he's going to drive to the nearest bar.
Right.
And like, so it was really getting to that point. And
Bruce is at the Liffey. He hasn't left for 3 days.
right. So yeah, it just like you can't blame him. So Crustier probably doesn't begin to describe where Bruce was middle of last week when that trade was made.
He lost all hope.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right, that is your Bruce Boudreau quote of the week. Now on to our Kiprill watch.
Ooh.
Kiprill Kaprizov, he is a pretty notable week actually.
Yeah.
Since we've last talked about him. I think it's been a week or so. I don't think we talked about him last show.
It's been 2 weeks. I've got the info here.
Yeah, he is the second. I got this from the KHL English Twitter account. The second Russian-born player in KHL history after Sergei Mozakin, who finished the regular season #1 in goals. 30 goals in 57 games is the top scorer in the regular season.
Yep. Yeah, and so actually, since the last time we talked about him 2 weeks ago, because I keep these numbers in my phone just because otherwise we forget all the time. He played 6 games and scored 12 points. So
Niederreiter-esque pace.
no kidding. Not a bad stretch for one Kiprill Kaprizov in the last 2 weeks. We didn't talk about him last week, so I don't know exactly how those weeks break down. But 2 weeks, 6 games, 12 points, and that, yeah, as you said, that did finish the KHL regular season. I believe they start a lot earlier, so they're, I believe, gearing into playoffs this week. But huge season, 30 goal season in just 57 games. I mean, that's
huge.
That's pretty huge.
Do you have another prospect you wish to highlight?
Sure. So we talked about this guy with the first prospect report of the season, and I figured I'd bring him up again. Is one Connor Dewar. He was a third round pick of the Wild this past summer, playing for the Everett Silvertips in the WHL, out west in the Canadian juniors there, and he has 73 points in 52 games. So we talk about Kiprill Kaprizov. Obviously, the KHL is probably a little bit tougher competition than the WHL, but WHL is no joke. I mean, that's probably the second highest, second highest junior league that you can get into, and that's competition there is pretty stiff. So 34 goals, 39 assists, 73 points in 52 games. Also, our acquaintance of mine, Darren Brown, writes for Hockey Wilderness on occasion. He lives out in Seattle. I met him out there last year. He went to an Everett game and came back with a scouting report that Dewar looked great. This guy, it's a third-round pick, but it seems like it's going really well. And obviously, I don't think he's going to be up next season or anything, but you certainly like to hear from prospects like this that are doing this well, as they try to restock that cupboard that was so brutally dry before Paul Fenton took over. So as much as we hated that first-round pick that we keep talking about, the later-round picks are still doing fantastic. So that's something to be moderately positive about.
All right, that will do it for Prospect Watch. Over to Central Intelligence. Central Intelligence for the week. The Central Division was know, like I guess not everyone was active, but there were a fair few teams in the division that were active here on the trade deadline. Winnipeg, 78 points. They're still leading the Central Division. They obviously, as I mentioned before, they got Kevin Hayes from the New York Rangers today at the trade deadline for a first-round pick and prospect Brendan Lemieux. That was kind of I think that was one of the first kind of more noteworthy trades of the day, if I remember right. Then you have the Nashville Predators. They're in second place with 77 points. And obviously, we remember them from such trades as trading for Mikhail Granlund. Then they get Wayne Simmons from the Flyers in exchange for Ryan Hartman and a 2020 conditional fourth-round pick.
That was a steal.
So dealing with Trader Chuck in Philadelphia. But that was really the only kind of noteworthy move since February 6th when the Predators acquired noted goal-scoring stalwarts Brian Boyle, Cody McLeod from their respective teams. Then you have the St. Louis Blues, who actually did nothing at the trade deadline. Oh, I apologize. The late trade, Michael Del Zotto comes in from the Anaheim Ducks in exchange for a sixth-round pick in 2019.
Yeah.
Blues are third in the division with 72 points. They are 5 points behind Nashville, and they have 2 games in hand. So they are inching pretty close. Then the Dallas Stars, oh, man, they traded for Matt Zuccarello over the weekend, and then in his first game on Sunday, Matt Zuccarello takes a puck, and I think it was like the arm or the shoulder, somewhere in there.
Brutal.
And he is now out at least 4 weeks after it was recommended that he had surgery. Zuccarello acquired from the Rangers for 2 conditional picks, one in 2019, one in 2020. There's conditions on, like first-round pick if the Stars go so far in the playoffs, and if they re-sign Zuccarello. So There you go. Also, Stars acquiring Ben Lovejoy on Saturday from the New Jersey Devils for Connor Carrick and a third-round pick. So Dallas Stars lead the first wildcard spot in the West with 67 points, while behind with 66. Colorado Avalanche, they are behind the Minnesota Wild with 65 points, and they have a game in hand. The Wild are kind of flopping back and forth with the Avalanche in that last playoff spot. But the Avs pick up Derek Brassard from the Florida Panthers before the trade deadline, along with a conditional 2020 sixth-round pick in exchange for a 2020 third-round pick. A lot of future draft picks, like not 2019, but like 2020 and beyond draft picks changing hands, which was an interesting trend of the trade deadline this year. Then you have the Chicago Blackhawks, 61 points. I don't believe they did anything. Just a minor league trade on Sunday. Spencer Watson from the LA Kings for Matheson Ikopelli. So There you go. That's your Central Intelligence for the week. And now, last but not least, we quickly are going to try to hit on our jersey segment. All right, Ben, jerseys. We have hockey movie jerseys this week. I think we're going to kind of highlight some of our personal favorite hockey movie jerseys. What do you got to lead it off?
Well, I'll leave the home run.
Yeah, you're going to leave the obvious one to me, aren't you?
Yeah. But I was just kind of thinking about this as a overall question, and I kind of it's become iconic just because of the movie, but I do enjoy the Charleston Chiefs jerseys. I think a lot of the jerseys from that movie are, it was 70s, so they were all kind of classic designs. Like, they didn't go nuts. They didn't even know what going nuts with hockey jerseys was at that point.
Reebok's we got some suggestions.
Yeah, there was no piping on any of those jerseys. There was no drop shadow numbering. So there was a lot of really nice, simple jerseys in Slapshot, and I really do appreciate that. And obviously, the focus wasn't on the jerseys. Nobody cared about the jerseys, but it was something that they did a decent job of representing what hockey jerseys actually look like, versus some movies that just kind of completely missed the mark, as I'm sure we'll talk about. But anything in Slapshot, especially the Charleston Chiefs, Great jerseys. I really do enjoy them. So you can go ahead on your 15-minute love rant here.
No, I'm going to keep it short because I think I hear Tom going nuts in the phone.
It's an internal
about
rage.
time.
He's tapping his toe.
I'm just kidding. But no, I'm going to obviously the slam dunk one for me is the Mighty Ducks that was introduced in D2, which is the better movie.
Yes.
As people like to yap us about.
Uh-huh.
D2 is the better movie. I will fight. I don't care if noted hockey powers are featured in this movie like Iceland and Trinidad and Tobago. D2 is still a good movie. Don't at me about this.
Yeah.
And it's not just the Ducks jerseys that get introduced at the end. Like, I like the USA jerseys in this. They're, looking at it, they're very 90s, but
yeah, I
like them. You're probably not, because you probably see it from the different lens that they're very 90s in the bad way.
But my love for the 90s is well documented too, but I didn't really like the Team USA jerseys. I thought they were a little bit on the tacky side, which I honestly think they were kind of going for that. Because that was, a huge part of the storyline was kind of selling out. And I think that was on purpose. So I think that they were tacky, but I think they were honestly tacky on purpose. And speaking of this, you may not like this and I may catch some heat for this. I'm not a fan of the original Mighty Ducks jerseys, the D1 jerseys. They're okay.
Yeah.
But the color scheme doesn't work for me.
Going on.
Yeah, the color scheme doesn't work for me. The duck is kind of weird, honestly. It's like it's like a hammered version of the Oregon duck, maybe. I don't know. And there's like it just says I don't like it. It says Ducks on the bottom. I don't like jerseys where you have the logo and the name of the team unless it's done in a really nice way. And those two, I feel like they could completely exist separately from each other. So I don't really like it all that much. But I do like D3. I think the Eden Hall Warrior jerseys were nicely done. So you got good balance on either side of those legendary D2 jerseys.
I'll say this: one good, one more bad from the Mighty Ducks series. The Hawks jerseys I wasn't really big on.
Really?
You look at it, the name on the back, it's got like a hawk between the name and the number. That's too much. And then I'm not really a big fan of like the yellow backdrop that gets dropped in just to emphasize hawks.
Okay.
And then again, they've got more hawks on the shoulders. There's hawks everywhere on this jersey. It's almost too much for me. So that's not really a favorite of mine, in addition to them being the Hawks and being, cheating bastards. But the best jersey I thought was, I shouldn't say the best, but a good jersey from the Mighty Ducks series is Iceland. Like, we don't talk about Iceland. It's just simple.
Yeah.
It's just simple. It's got some stripes on the arms, and then it's got Iceland, and then under it is like the Viking head, which is really good. I don't think we talk about it too much because everyone's enamored with Iceland losing in the end, but they had really good jerseys.
I would agree.
They looked good while being the villain.
Yeah. Yeah, they had to have black jerseys, even though Iceland, I don't think that's necessarily a color of theirs, but the fact that the Hawks and Iceland both had those black evil jerseys, I think is worth noting and kind of a funny side note.
Just be glad they didn't do the skull chant.
Don't get me started, Giles.
Okay. Another favorite hockey movie jersey of mine is the Mystery Alaska jersey.
Yes, those are very nice.
It's so simple, and it's got the laces up top right at the collar, and then it's just a simple M for mystery, and then it's just got like two white stripes on the sleeve. And now that I kind of look at it, it kind of looks like lighter template of what the Winnipeg Jets now wear.
Okay.
Because they've got the stripe that kind of goes from the collar down the shoulders, down the arm, and then you've got two stripes at the elbow.
Sure.
Like, it almost looks like that was the framework for the Winnipeg Jets in their jersey quest. Jets 2.0.
I referenced Mystery Alaska when I made third jerseys this summer. I made the Wild third jersey. and I made it very simple, but I used that M logo that we kind of feel like they'll probably use for a third jersey. And I kept it really simple, but then when I kind of took a step back and looked at it, I was like, I kind of like it in a very simple Mystery Alaska jersey kind of way. Like, I think I even referenced that in the article, if you want to dig all the way back to August when I did those. But yeah, I'm with you on those 100%. Mystery Alaska was good. Also the Halifax, I forget the team name, Halifax jerseys from the Goon.
I was going to bring that in, the Shamrocks. The Shamrocks.
Yeah.
Shamrocks.
Those are decent too.
They're good.
Giles, if you don't wrap
Hey,
this
what
up.
I didn't like was Hanrahan's jersey and Slapshot. Not good. It's hideous.
Giles, I'm about to get crusty here. I'm about to go Boudreau if we don't wrap this up.
What do we at, an hour 15?
Make it. Oh, I was going to say, make it quick, Tom, but you were telling me to wrap it up.
No. You hit all the good ones.
All right. So
I don't think we missed any.
Mission accomplished.
All right. That's it. That's all for us. Thanks to Captain Tom for sitting in with us and supervising our launch of the new Zone Coverage Studios, which I fortunately couldn't make it.
Are we the first ones to record?
I'll try again next week.
First podcast.
Hell yeah.
What?
Soccer's next.
We're the first ones to record in the new studios. We're going places.
And the studio's cursed.
Oh, yikes.
You can follow Tom on Twitter at tschreier3 for his hockey takes. He dabbles more in hoops and baseball and other sports.
He's not allowed in hockey.
The hockey world has banished me. It's been banished.
And you can follow Ben and I on Twitter at Ben Remington, at Giles Farrell, podcast Twitter at GATG Wild Podcast. You can find the Jersey segment, part of our YouTube channel. Go to YouTube, search Giles and the Goalie. You can find us there. Subscribe, as we do make the Jersey segment. We try to put that into video as it's more of a visual thing. Ben, myself, and Tom, we all write for a website called Zone Coverage, zonecoverage.com, at Zone Coverage MN on Twitter. For all that, do check out the Zone Coverage YouTube channel, which has a pretty neat About Me video that just came out. That was professionally done. It's pretty neat. Ben's dog is featured more than I am, so check that out.
Not true.
And you can find us otherwise fine show on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all of your favorite channels. So that can do it for us this week. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we will chat with you again next week.
It's not resiliency. You're making it sound like we're good. That's all. I'm done.